I mean, you look at some of the standings here, it really is just Denver and everybody else. They're kind of just chilling at 45 and 19. They're not really doing anything right now. Phoenix, they got their thing going on. Golden State can't win on the road. Minnesota is kind of in that mix weirdly. Dallas is still in the play-in. LA is still in the play-in. And then, you know, I skipped over one team because we don't know what's going to happen here in the next couple of weeks, depending on the developments from yesterday morning, where basically at like 6 a.m. or whatever it was, the entire Memphis Grizzlies organization quote paraphrase the quote from one of Dave Chappelle's specials, "Where is Ja?" Because there was the Instagram story that came up of Ja Morant in a nightclub, seemingly just holding a gun, and it just added to this. Has it been what, a week since this avalanche of stuff has started
Well,
with Ja Morant? I mean, it's amazing how last year at this point he was one of the most improved young superstars in the NBA. He made the jump. Memphis was able to make a bit of a run and get some people really excited about where they're going on this season. And they're still a good team. They're still second in the West. The West is tough. And when you're second in the West, that shows you're a good team. So good that apparently Ja thought he was not going to have any problems in the West. You heard that quote from a few weeks ago before the deadline. And then, got a couple of losses here and there. And now this off the court stuff is snowballing for him. You have the gun incident. You have his buddy getting banned from the Memphis State arena for a year. You have him and that friend being what was it, involved in a lawsuit where apparently they might have punched a 17-year-old. It's weird, and now you see him getting suspended for 2 games. Then it comes out and says, "I need to take some time off here. I need to find myself." Essentially, it's fascinating to see how fast it has developed, or I guess regressed for Ja.
and Mitch, another thing that really, without getting too deep into it, but this, in terms of guns, is a very big thing in Tennessee right now. We saw something happen weeks ago that I won't go into detail with, obviously gun
Okay.
violence. And that is something that the Grizzlies head coach, Taylor Jenkins, said yesterday in a quote, and I'll read it to you right here. Obviously, nationwide, league wide, there's been a lot of attention on gun violence. And so for us, that's a stance that we've taken about and how we can support Ja throughout this growth opportunity. It's a learning opportunity, and hopefully we can be better from it. End quote. Mitch, they had a moment of silence a couple weeks ago. You mentioned the
Right.
first with, I believe it was against the Pacers with his buddy who's now suspended from the Memphis arena now for over a year. Then obviously the accusation of altercation with the 17-year-old. And now it's like it's almost like he thinks he's untouchable, which to a degree on the outside, it ultimately looks like athletes are put on this pedestal and they really can't be touched. But what he's done now is he's pretty much thrown himself out there to say, "Hey, look, I think I'm untouchable." And it's not the truth. The Grizzlies did what they needed to do. And really, you just have to hope that Ja Morant, who is a sensational talent, who is a young star in the NBA, who Mitch really was one of the most likable players in the NBA before this season. You have to hope he can figure it out, because the Grizzlies had become one of the teams that I believe recently, from what I read when they did a survey, are one of the most hated teams in the NBA. And it's not because of Ja, it's because of Dylan Brooks and other antics that the Grizzlies do. But this team's become unlikable. And now, Mitch, Ja is going to miss crucial games. This is a team that is trying to lock up the 2 seed in the West and now has the Sacramento Kings 1 game behind them. And then 3 games behind are the Phoenix Suns, who are only going to keep winning because they got Kevin Durant. And you mentioned it was 2 games at first. Now there's really no timetable for return, said head coach Taylor Jenkins of the Grizzlies. By the end of this, Mitch, who knows? I'm not saying I think the Grizzlies fall all the way down to the play. I don't really think that's possible because they have a 5.5 game lead on the Timberwolves at 6. But
Right.
Mitch, if you said they could fall to the 4 seed, it wouldn't shock me, because we don't know how long Ja will be out. And when he comes back, what is he going to look like? Where's his head at, especially going into road arenas now? Um, I'm not going to sit here and lecture. There's been plenty of people in the media that get paid more than you and I that have, places to touch on this. And Shannon Sharp's one of them. Jalen Rose gave a very powerful stance because we know Jalen Rose had a lot of off the court issues, both at Michigan and then in the NBA. So those guys would know better than you and I. Obviously, you hope Ja Morant can get help and figure out and realize that what he did was not right in any way. But this not only hurts him, but it hurts his team. And that's the bigger thing because the Grizzlies now, Mitch, are in danger of dropping out of having home court potentially all the way through the second round if they were to meet Denver in the Western Conference Finals.
Well, I'm happy you brought up the Michigan thing because I was actually, believe it or not, thinking about this sort of situation involving that Wolverine squad yesterday. You mentioned Jalen Rose. His teammate Chris Webber was also a private, well, like Ja Morant, was a private school player. He went to Detroit Country Day School. The name that Ja Morant went to escapes me. And by the way, I should re-clarify. The Grizzlies said that Ja would be out at least 2 games before his statement on saying he's going to take. It's going to be more so indefinite. I think I said the NBA at first suspended him, and that's incorrect. But kind of thinking of where what he's doing in perspective of where he came up from. And I'm not saying that Ja had the easiest life in the world, but he's kind of acting as if he came up from this hard, tough upbringing. And this wasn't necessarily the case. And I think people are kind of harping on that more so just for the hypocrisy of you want to act like a tough guy or whatever. You came up from a 2-parent household. You went to Murray State, you went to a private school, and I understand. It's not that I don't understand. I can see why people are harping on it more than if he actually did come up as somebody who had a tough life. Let's say Allen Iverson. Allen Iverson had a background that it led to people being concerned of him pre-draft. It had a stigma against him throughout the earlier parts of his career. But that dude legitimately came from the place that's between a rock and a hard place. Ja, it just kind of feels like, what are you doing, guy? You have all of it here. You got the Nike contract that was taken from Kyrie and given to you, and you're going to put up this facade that it's too much now at this point to be offset. It's kind of like with, some people said Kyrie a few months ago. It's too much now to offset the level of talent that you bring to the basketball court at this point. Obviously, the situation between Kyrie and Ja are very different. The details are different, but I don't know. The only thing you can hope for now is that he kind of gets his mind in check. He can return to the team at a viable point when he's ready, and they can find their way back into another run towards the deeper part of the West playoffs. But it's not going to be easy right now for them or him.
Right. And you mentioned the Nike contract, Mitch. That does not kick in until next year. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, they could take it away. But, Mitch, there is a possibility that he could do something. There's still the possibility that Ja could be suspended by the league. If not, potentially fined. It's in the collective bargaining agreement. It forbids players possessing a firearm while at an NBA facility or traveling for league business. We'll see what happens. Obviously, the notable name in terms of being suspended for a firearm possession was Gilbert Arenas back in 2010. We know what happened there, but there's still more that could come out of this. And ultimately, you hope Ja Morant can get it because he is a fun, exciting player. Besides all the things he says off the floor about not being afraid in the West, I think he is a little afraid in the West. I know I would be with the other teams that are in there. But we'll have to wait and see what goes on here. And, obviously hope he gets the help he needs and obviously hope he understands where he went wrong here. I think that's the bigger understanding, Mitch, because he is young. He's very young still. Yeah. He's younger than you and I as we're sitting here doing this. And sometimes you don't get it. Hopefully he gets it and can turn it around because it's not a good look for him or the Grizzlies. And I'm sure the NBA isn't happy either because he is, along with Luka and along with these other young stars, he is going to be a face of the association here in the next 5 years once some of these all-time greats that we have right now either slow down and or retire.
So I was looking up some more details on the incident on his Instagram live story the other night. So it was at a Denver club that this gun incident seemingly took place. So one of two things might have happened. Number one, how did Ja Morant get a gun in Denver? And number two, how did Ja, if he had the gun with him, how did he get a gun onto the plane Because isn't that a whole thing where the NBA has like some very strict
Right.
rules regarding
Yep.
firearms and pertains to that Gilbert Arenas thing from a few years?
And
Oh my lord!
that's what I mentioned. It says
Oh,
while at an NBA facility or traveling for league business. He did
ugh.
this after a 113-97 loss to Denver before they got on a plane to fly to LA and take on the Clippers. That to me,
Oh
Mitch,
god.
I'm not obviously in the NBA, or else I more than likely wouldn't be doing this. Who knows? It could be. Um, I kind of assume that would be a business trip, if I'm not mistaken, even though they weren't in the plane yet when this happened. But you just played a game. You were flying out early the next morning to go to another city to play a game. So that's why I think in this article on ESPN.com, it mentions that at the very bottom, and why I think there's still more to be seen. And if he is either A, fined, or B, suspended.
This is hold on. Oh, I almost stopped the whole broadcast there. That's pretty much it. That is it. That's what we're going for. And but at the same time, as much as we kind of are making, I'm making a little bit light of it right now. You're kind of just sitting there. So it's not guilt by association. I'm hoping that help can be had for him to get his head on straight at the same time, get the team back on track. Not so much on track that you run into Cleveland in the finals and then they end up beating you, but that's not here nor there.
Right.